The great arena was alive with noise. Alien voices echoed from wall to wall, a mix of laughter, shouts, and cruel jokes. Every seat was filled. Giants, creatures with scales, fur, and armor-like skin, leaned forward to watch the contest about to begin. At the center stood the fighters. They were tall, strong, and terrifying. One alien's arms were thick like tree trunks. Another had claws sharp enough to tear metal apart. Their glowing eyes burned with pride. Each of them looked like a monster built only for war. And then, there was the human. The human was small. No thick armor. No shining weapon. Only a simple uniform, dusty and plain. Compared to the alien warriors, he looked fragile, almost weak. His body was nothing like the giants who surrounded him. His hands were steady, but his frame was thin. His face calm, but his size laughable. The crowd reacted instantly. The laughter was loud, cruel, and endless. "Is this a warrior or a child?" One alien shouted. "He will not last even a breath." Another roared. All around, claws slapped together, tails thumped the stone floor, wings flapped in amusement. The sound was deafening. They were not cheering for him. They were laughing at him. The human stood in silence. He did not shout back. He did not lower his head in shame. His eyes were calm, his breathing steady. It was as if the storm of insults could not reach him. But to the aliens, this silence was only more reason to mock. Look at him, too scared to even speak. Perhaps he thinks he is brave. Pathetic creature. He is nothing but a toy soldier. Near the front row sat a group of commanders, tall alien leaders with robes of honor. They too were smiling with sharp teeth, certain the show would be short and bloody. To them, this fight was not a contest. It was entertainment. Only one figure sat without laughing. It was the human's partner. An alien, yes, but not like the others. His skin was silver gray, his eyes glowing softly with hidden knowledge. He sat tall, arms folded, saying nothing. While others mocked, he remained still, watching the human with something the crowd could not understand. Respect. The crowd noticed this and whispered,
"Why does he not laugh?"
"Does he believe in the tiny warrior?" Impossible. No one could believe in that human. Yet the silent partner stayed unmoving, calm as if he knew a secret. In the arena, the human moved at last. Slowly he lifted his chin. His eyes scanned the crowd of thousands. For a moment, his gaze was not weak. It was sharp, unbroken, and full of quiet fire. The laughter stumbled for just 1 second before roaring louder again. "Look, he dares to stare back. Does he think those tiny eyes can frighten us? Soon his bones will break, and then we will see if he still looks so calm." The announcer, a tall alien with 6 arms and a booming voice, raised his hand. The noise began to fade. Let the contest begin. A gate opened. From the shadows stepped the challenger, an alien warrior twice the height of the human, muscles bulging, armored from head to toe. His tusks curved upward, his voice deep as thunder. He dragged a weapon across the stone floor, the screech echoing through the arena. Sparks flew with every step. The crowd exploded into cheers. This was the warrior they had come to see. The giant raised his weapon and pointed it toward the human. "Tiny one," the warrior growled, "your life ends today. I will crush you so quickly that your people will never dare return to this arena." The crowd cheered louder. The human did not move. His face remained calm. His hands were still empty, resting at his sides. To the crowd, it looked like surrender. To his partner, it looked like patience. The giant stepped closer, mocking again. "Do you shake in fear? Are your legs weak? Perhaps I should strike quickly so the humiliation does not last." Laughter again. But in that sea of cruel voices, the partner's eyes glowed brighter. The announcer shouted once more, "Prepare for combat." The crowd rose to their feet, chanting, shouting, eager for blood. Some aliens banged weapons against shields. Others stomped until the stone floor trembled. The sound was like thunder rolling across the sky. The human took a single step forward. Just one. It was slow, deliberate, almost too calm for such a deadly moment. The crowd burst into louder jeers. "See, he can barely move. This will be finished in seconds." Pathetic human. But that single step carried something the crowd did not notice. The human's eyes had changed. Behind the calm face there was focus, deep and sharp. The partner leaned forward slightly as if waiting. The giant warrior lifted his weapon high, ready to strike. The crowd roared again, ready to see the human crushed. The air grew heavy. The ground seemed to shake beneath their feet. Thousands of eyes locked on the tiny warrior in the center. Would he fall in the first strike? Would he even try to resist? Or was there something hidden inside this fragile frame? The mockery was loud, the insults endless, but the human stood still, breathing calmly, his eyes never leaving the giant before him, and in that silence between shouts, the first true spark of fear touched the crowd, so small they didn't even notice. The contest had not yet begun, but already something was different. The arena trembled as the challenger stepped fully into the light. His name was Korvac, a warrior whose victories were carved into the stone walls of the city. His armor was black iron, scarred with marks from 100 battles. His chest rose and fell like a mountain breathing. Every movement was heavy, powerful, and filled with purpose. Korvac pointed his weapon, a massive blade fused with glowing crystal, toward the small human. The weapon itself was almost as tall as the human, humming with deadly energy. The crowd cheered wildly. They shouted his name again and again. Korvac! 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 Their voices merged into a storm, echoing across the arena like 1,000 drums. The human did not flinch. He stood as still as a stone watching the towering figure. His uniform was plain, his hand still empty. To the audience it looked like foolishness. To Korvac it looked like an insult. You dare stand before me without a weapon? Korvac growled, his tusks gleaming. You insult the honor of combat. Do you believe you are beyond fear, or are you simply too small to understand it? Laughter burst from the stands. The aliens loved this game. The giant mocking the tiny warrior. This was what they had come to see. But the human gave no reply. His silence was sharper than any insult. Korvac's eyes narrowed. He circled the human, each step shaking the ground. He lifted his blade high, showing off his strength. This will be quick, he promised the crowd. One strike and this insect will be nothing but dust beneath my feet. The crowd roared with approval. They pounded their fists against their chests, their claws against the stone railings. The noise was deafening, yet in the sea of jeers one figure remained silent, the human's partner. His silver-gray skin reflected the arena lights. His glowing eyes stayed locked on the human. He was still, but inside he knew something the others did not. He had fought beside humans before. He had seen what made them dangerous. The crowd did not know. Korvac did not know. But the partner remembered. Humans were never what they appeared to be. Korvac stopped circling and raised his blade again, this time pointing it at the silent partner in the stands. You, he said, his voice echoing like thunder. Why do you not laugh with the others? Do you believe in this fragile thing you call a warrior? Speak, or do you hide your shame in silence? The partner only stared back, calm as the human below. His eyes glowed brighter, but his lips did not move. His silence was the answer, the crowd whispered. Why does he not mock? Why does he not cheer for Korvac? Does he know something we do not? Korvac growled in frustration. Very well. When your pet is broken at my feet, your silence will end in tears. The giant slammed his blade against the ground. Sparks exploded. The arena floor cracked beneath the force. The crowd howled with excitement, but the human did not move. His calm face, his steady eyes, and his stillness were louder than the noise around him. Korvac sneered. Do you plan to stand still forever, little one? Do you think by waiting you can survive me? For the first time, the human shifted. He raised his hands, empty hands, and spread his fingers slightly. It was a gesture so small, so simple, yet it made the crowd fall silent for a heartbeat. It was the stance of a warrior. No weapon. No armor, just readiness. The crowd laughed again, louder than before. He faces Korvac with bare hands. How foolish. But the partner's eyes shone with understanding. He recognized the stance. He had seen humans fight with nothing but fists, and he knew what Korvac did not. That weapons were only tools, but strategy was everything. Korvac bared his tusks. Then you die as you are, weak, unarmed, and pitiful. The announcer lifted his 6 arms again. His booming voice filled the air. Warriors! The challenge begins! First strike decides your fate. The crowd erupted, shaking the entire arena. Korvac charged. His blade rose high, glowing with energy, heavy enough to split stone. Every step thundered like a quake. Dust lifted and the arena floor trembled under his weight. The human did not run. He did not scream. He waited. Calm. Still. Ready. The blade came down. The crowd leaned forward, hungry to see the fragile body crushed in a single blow. They waited for the scream, for the blood, for the end. But what they saw was different. At the very last moment, the human moved, quick as lightning, silent as shadow. The blade smashed into stone, cracking the ground where he had been. Dust exploded into the air, covering the arena in a cloud. The crowd gasped. Their voices caught in their throats. The human was gone from the strike zone, untouched, standing a few feet away. His breathing was calm. His stance unchanged. Korvac snarled, lifting his blade again. "You will not escape me forever, insect." The crowd began to shout again, but this time there was confusion in their voices. They had seen the tiny warrior survive the first blow. That was not supposed to happen. The partner in the stands leaned forward, the faintest smile on his lips. The challenge had begun. And already the first crack had appeared in the wall of alien arrogance. The human was no toy soldier. He was something far more dangerous. The dust from Korvac's missed attack rose into the air, turning the arena into a storm of gray clouds. The giant's blade was buried deep in the stone floor, cracks spreading like rivers across the ground. The crowd roared in shock and disbelief. The human had moved. No one saw exactly how. One moment he stood in front of the giant, the next he was a blur standing untouched to the side. It was too fast for most eyes to follow. The laughter that had filled the arena a moment ago was now broken by gasps. Korvac pulled his blade free, furious. His tusks dripped with saliva as he snarled. "You think speed will save you, insect? It only delays your death." The human didn't answer. He only shifted his stance again. Feet firm, hands open, calm as flowing water. The crowd started to argue among themselves. "Did you see it? He moved like a shadow." "No, it was luck. He cannot do it again. He is too small, too weak." That was a mistake, nothing more. But in the stands, the human's partner remained still, his glowing eyes fixed on the fight. His silence spoke more than any word. Korvac charged again, swinging his massive blade sideways. The air split with the force, the wind screaming around it. The swing was wide, fast, and meant to cut the human in half. At the very last second, the human ducked low. The blade cut nothing but air. Sparks flew as the weapon struck the arena wall. The crowd roared again, their voices shaking the stone pillars. Still, the human stood unharmed. This time, he moved closer. Before the crowd could blink, he struck. One precise blow with his fist against Korvac's armored side. It was not a heavy punch, not compared to the giant's strength, but it landed exactly on a joint where the armor plates overlapped. Crack. The sound was soft but clear. Korvac staggered, his tusks grinding in pain. The arena went silent. For the first time, blood appeared. A thin line of dark liquid ran down the alien's armor. It was small, but it was real. The crowd froze. Their laughter had turned to disbelief. Did the tiny one strike him? No, it cannot be. That was nothing. But look, the giant bleeds. Korvac's eyes burned with rage. "You dare wound me, insect?" He slammed his blade against the ground, sending another shockwave across the arena. "I will crush you into dust." The human stepped back only a little. His breathing was still calm, but his eyes were sharper now, locked on every movement of the giant. He had tested his opponent. He had learned something, and the partner watching from the stands knew exactly what it was. Humans didn't fight with power alone. They fought with knowledge. Every step, every glance, every strike was a calculation. Korvac charged once more, faster this time, his blade sweeping downward with all the strength of his monstrous body. The ground shook, stones cracked, the air screamed. But again the human moved. He rolled, quick and silent, coming up on his feet behind the giant. His eyes flicked across the giant's back, searching. In an instant he struck again, another precise blow to the side of the knee. Korvac roared, stumbling forward. The crowd screamed in shock. The massive warrior had almost fallen. The silence that followed was heavy. For the first time in centuries they had seen something new in the arena, a small, fragile being forcing a giant to lose balance. The human did not celebrate. He simply returned to his stance, calm, focused, waiting. The crowd was restless now. They shouted over each other. "He moves too fast." "It is a trick." "He cannot win!" "But what if he can?" Korvac's chest heaved with fury. His pride was wounded more than his body. He had never been mocked, never been challenged by something so small. The laughter that once belonged to him was gone, stolen by shock. "You will pay for this humiliation," he thundered. His blade glowed brighter as the crystal inside it flared to life. Energy hummed through the air, a deep vibration that rattled bones. The partner's glowing eyes narrowed. He knew what was coming. The giant was about to unleash a weapon strike strong enough to level half the arena. The human's face did not change. His eyes stayed locked on the giant, unblinking. Korvac raised his blade high, the crystal glowing like a star. The crowd shouted in excitement, waiting for the final devastating blow. This was the moment they had been promised, the tiny warrior's end. The blade came down, blazing with energy, but the human was already moving. With a speed so sharp it looked unreal. He darted forward, not away, but toward the giant. The crowd gasped as he slid under the falling weapon, the heat of the crystal burning the air above his back. He rolled out, came up on one knee and struck again. This time the blow was aimed at the giant's side where the ribs met the armor. A quick, powerful punch landed with precision. Crack. The sound echoed louder this time. The giant stumbled again, coughing in pain, his tusks snapping together. His blade smashed into the ground harmlessly, sending a wave of dust and sparks into the air. The crowd was in chaos now. Some shouted for Korvac. Others whispered in fear of the human. The balance had shifted. The first strike had been made, and it was not by the giant. The tiny warrior had drawn blood. The tiny warrior had cracked the armor, and for the first time the crowd began to realize, perhaps this fight was not the comedy they expected. Perhaps it was something far more dangerous. The human straightened slowly, his eyes calm but fierce. He had tested the giant. He had proven a truth no one in the arena wanted to believe. The first strike belonged to him. The arena had changed. A short while ago, it was filled with laughter and mockery. The aliens had shouted, jeered, and treated the human like a joke. But now silence crept into the crowd. Their laughter had turned to whispers, and their cheers had become uneasy. The human stood steady, untouched, his eyes sharp. His small body carried no wounds. The giant, Korvac, however, bore the marks of battle. Thin cracks in his armor, bruises beneath his thick skin, and the sting of humiliation. No one had expected this. No one had imagined the tiny warrior would last more than a single breath. Yet here he stood, having struck the first true blows. Korvac's chest heaved with rage. His tusks gleamed as he bared them, saliva dripping down in fury. "You dare wound me?" he thundered. His voice was so loud that the arena walls shook. "You dare humiliate me in front of my people?" The crowd roared at his words, desperate to regain the old rhythm of certainty. "Yes, crush him. Show the insect his place. End this now, Korvac." But their voices were not as confident as before. Some shouted with passion, others with fear, as if they were trying to convince themselves the giant could still win. The human's partner watched in silence, his glowing eyes reflecting the shifting balance. He could see it clearly. The arena was no longer laughing. It was beginning to doubt. Korvac raised his massive blade again, the crystal core glowing hotter, brighter. Sparks leapt from it, scorching the stone floor as he swung. His fury made him faster, wilder, more dangerous. The human moved like water. He stepped back, ducked low, spun to the side. Each time the giant's blade came down, it struck only air and stone. The ground cracked, dust rose, and sparks burned. But the tiny warrior remained untouched. The crowd gasped again and again. "How does he move like that?" "He is too fast." No, this is not possible." The fight dragged on, and with every failed strike, Korvac's fury grew heavier. His attacks lost their precision. His swings became wider, his movements slower under the weight of his own anger. The human's eyes studied everything. The rhythm of the giant's breathing, the timing of his steps, the weakness in the joints of his armor. Every detail was noted, remembered, stored away. And then he struck again. It was sudden, so fast that even the front row of the arena barely saw it. A quick step forward, a sharp jab to the giant's side right under the ribs, the same weak spot as before. Crack. Korvac howled in pain. His body staggered sideways, his balance breaking. The ground shook beneath his stumble. The arena fell silent once more. For the second time, the tiny warrior had forced the giant to stumble. The human stepped back, calm, breathing steady. His fists were unmarked, his eyes unshaken. Korvac pounded his chest, roaring to cover his pain. "You are nothing," he shouted. "Nothing? I will tear you apart." His voice was full of rage, but beneath it there was something new. something he had never felt before. Fear. The crowd could hear it. They could feel it. Their mighty champion was no longer confident. His voice was louder, but it was less certain. Whispers grew louder in the seats. He bleeds too much. His armor is cracked. That human, he is not weak at all. The partner's glowing eyes narrowed, catching the change in the air. This was the turning point. If the human held steady, the balance of the entire arena would collapse. Korvac launched himself forward again, desperate. His blade whistled through the air, glowing with furious energy. But the human ducked, twisted, rolled, always one step ahead. Every time he avoided a strike, the crowd's unease deepened. Every time the giant missed, the silence grew louder. And then, in a move no one expected, the human struck not once, but twice. First, a sharp jab to the side of the giant's knee. Second, a strike to the exposed joint at the elbow. Both blows landed with perfect accuracy. Korvac bellowed, his body twisting in pain. His massive blade slipped in his grip, nearly falling from his hands. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. The whispers turned to fear. He cannot control the fight. The human, he's breaking him piece by piece. This is not possible. This cannot be real. The human did not celebrate. He did not shout. He only returned to his stance, calm, silent, focused. Korvac roared louder, forcing himself upright. He raised his weapon with both hands, his body trembling with rage and fatigue. His tusks ground together and his eyes blazed with desperation. The announcer's voice thundered above the chaos. "The human still stands," he declared. "The mighty Korvac bleeds." The arena shook with cries, some angry, some frightened, all confused. Their world had been turned upside down. What was supposed to be a simple mockery had become something dangerous. Something none of them could predict. The partner leaned forward at last. His silver-gray skin glowed faintly under the lights. His voice was quiet, meant only for himself, but the words carried weight. "They still do not understand," he whispered. "This is only the beginning." Korvac roared and charged again, but his steps were slower now, his power fading with each strike. The human's eyes narrowed, studying, calculating, waiting. The rising tension gripped the arena. The laughter was gone. The mockery had turned into fear. The fight was no longer entertainment, it was survival. And the tiny warrior was no longer the one they doubted. It was their giant who now stood on unsteady ground. The arena was restless. The laughter that once filled the air had died. Replaced by heavy silence and nervous whispers, the aliens shifted in their seats, claws scraping stone, tails twitching with unease. They had never seen this before. The mighty Korvac, their champion, their giant, stood hunched and bleeding. His armor was cracked. His breath came fast and uneven. The glow of his weapon was bright, but his grip on it shook. And the human? He stood calm, steady, unbroken. No armor, no weapon, just empty hands and sharp eyes. The crowd could not understand. The tiny warrior was supposed to fall in the first blow. He was supposed to be a joke, a fragile insect crushed under a giant's feet. But instead he had survived. He had struck. He had drawn blood. Korvac roared, his pride burning hotter than his wounds. "You mock me," he thundered. "You mock the honor of this arena." His voice cracked the air like thunder, but there was desperation beneath it. The human said nothing. He only raised his fists again. His stance was simple, but in its simplicity was something terrifying. Certainty. The crowd leaned forward, breath caught in their throats. Something was about to change. Korvac lunged, blade slicing through the air with a scream of crystal energy. But the human was already moving. He slipped to the side, feet gliding across the cracked stone. The blade missed him by inches, carving deep into the arena floor. The human struck. One sharp blow to the giant's knee. Then another to the side of his ribs, precise, focused, calculated, crack, crack. Korvac staggered, roaring in pain. His tusks clashed, his knees bent. The mighty warrior, the symbol of alien strength, stumbled like a drunk before the tiny human. The crowd gasped. Some shouted in denial. Others began to fall silent, horror spreading across their faces. He is breaking him. The giant is losing. No, this cannot be true. It cannot. And then came the moment that no one expected. Korvac swung wildly, desperate to land just one hit. His blade cut through dust and sparks, but not flesh. The human slipped inside his guard, closer than any alien would dare. His hand struck upward, fast, controlled, straight to the giant's chin. The blow echoed like thunder. The crowd froze. Korovac's head snapped back, his tusks grinding, his massive body stumbling backward. His weapon slipped from his hands and crashed into the arena floor. The giant had been disarmed. Silence fell like a heavy blanket over the crowd. For a moment, no one breathed. They stared at the impossible scene, a tiny human standing firm while their champion stood weaponless and broken. And in that silence, something shifted. The human straightened his back. His chest rose as he drew in a deep breath. His eyes lifted not just toward his opponent but toward the thousands watching. For the first time he allowed them to see what he carried inside. It was not strength of body. It was not power of size, it was spirit. The human's gaze was fierce, unyielding. His silence was no longer the quiet of weakness, it was the silence of a storm about to break. The crowd shivered. For the first time they felt something they had never expected to feel toward a human. Fear. Korvac roared again, louder than ever, trying to drown out the truth. No, I am stronger. I am the champion. His fists clenched, his body shaking with rage. You cannot defeat me. He charged barehanded now, swinging with all the fury of his massive body. But the human moved like wind, slipping aside, weaving through the giant's attacks with calm precision. Every miss left Korvac more off balance. Every failed strike showed his weakness, and then, strike after strike, the human attacked. To the elbow, to the knee, to the ribs. Each blow was fast, small, but perfectly placed. The giant groaned, stumbling, his breath ragged. His skin was bruised, his armor shattered. He swung again, but his strength was fading. The crowd could see it now. The human was not surviving by chance. He was not lucky. He was winning because he was something greater than they understood. The partner in the stands finally spoke, his voice low but strong enough to be felt in the silence. Do you see it now? He said, his glowing eyes sweeping across the arena. That is the spirit of humanity. They may be small, but they do not break. They may be fragile, but they rise. That is why they are feared. The crowd turned their eyes back to the human, and for the first time many of them did not see an insect. They saw a warrior. Korvac fell to one knee, his breath heavy, his body trembling. The arena shook as his massive weight struck the ground. The human stepped forward, slow and steady. His eyes never left the giant. His fists were raised, ready to finish it if needed, but his face showed no cruelty, no arrogance. Only resolve, the crowd whispered in awe. He fights without fear. He fights with purpose. This is not weakness. This is strength. The giant looked up, eyes filled with fury, but also something new. Doubt. For the first time in his life, he doubted his own victory. The human stood tall before him, his shadow small, yet somehow larger than the arena itself. The spirit of a true warrior had been revealed, and the aliens watching began to realize they had mocked too soon. This battle was no longer about strength. It was about will, and the tiny human's will was unbreakable. The arena was no longer laughing, the silence was heavy, pressing down on every alien in the stands. The crowd that had once mocked the human now stared in disbelief. Their champion, Korvac, knelt on one knee, wounded, his weapon shattered, his pride bleeding, and before him stood the human, small, calm, unbroken. But the story was not finished, because the human was not alone. From the shadows of the stands, the partner finally moved. Until now he had sat in silence, silver-gray skin glowing faintly, eyes like molten light. While others shouted and laughed, he had watched with stillness. His calm presence had unsettled many, but they had dismissed him as unimportant. Now he rose. The movement alone drew the crowd's attention. Thousands of eyes turned toward him. His tall frame glided down the steps, his cloak trailing like a shadow. The murmurs began to ripple through the arena. Why does he move? He was silent all this time. Who is he to walk as if he owns the ground? The human never turned, but his eyes flicked once toward the partner. A brief unspoken signal passed between them. No words, only understanding. The silver-skinned alien stepped onto the arena floor. His presence shifted the air itself. The mocking voices of the crowd faltered. Some gasped. Others whispered in fear. They knew his kind. He belonged to a race older than most in the galaxy, feared not for size or strength, but for wisdom and deadly precision. A people who fought rarely, but when they did, wars ended. The idea that one of them would walk beside a human was unthinkable. Korvac's eyes widened as he struggled back to his feet. His massive frame shook with fury and shame. No, he snarled. This fight is mine. He has no right to enter. The partner's glowing eyes locked on him, unblinking. His voice was calm, steady, and cutting. This fight was never yours. It was a test. And you have failed. The crowd erupted, their voices breaking in shock. A test? Failed? How can he say such things? Why does he call the human his equal? The partner stopped beside the tiny warrior. He bowed his head, not to the crowd, not to Korvac, but to the human. A bow of respect, the arena gasped as one. No! An alien shouted. This cannot be. He bows to the human? Impossible! What power does that fragile creature hold? The human said nothing. He did not bow in return. He simply raised his stance again, fists steady, eyes calm. His silence was enough. The bond between the two was clear, trust, earned and unshakable. Korvac roared, desperate to reclaim his pride. He lifted his fists, ignoring the pain tearing through his body. Both of you together will fall. I am champion of this arena, and I will not be mocked. But his words rang hollow. His steps were heavy. His strength was fading. The partner's eyes glowed brighter, a silver flame burning in the dark. Your arrogance blinds you, he said. You saw a small body and thought it weak. You saw silence and thought it fear. But you forgot the one truth of war. His gaze swept across the crowd, his words striking deeper than any weapon. Size is not strength. Unity is strength. The human stepped forward side by side with his partner. Two warriors of different worlds standing as one. One carried the unbreakable spirit. The other carried ancient knowledge. Together they were something greater. The crowd whispered, some in fear, others in awe. Unity? They fight as one? No, such a bond should not exist, but it did. And every alien present could feel it. Korvac, desperate, charged again, fists swinging. His rage gave him speed, but his body was too broken to hold its power. The human dodged left, the partner moved right. In perfect rhythm they struck, the human's fist to the ribs. The partner's palm to the chest. Crack, Korvac stumbled, coughing blood. He swung again, wild and clumsy. This time both warriors ducked under his strike. The human struck his knee. The partner struck his jaw. Crack, crack. The giant fell back, nearly collapsing. His breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes wide with disbelief. The crowd screamed in chaos. Impossible. They are breaking him together. No one has ever fought Korvac like this. But the truth was undeniable. The human had revealed his spirit. The partner had revealed his loyalty. And together, they revealed a power the galaxy had never seen before. Korvac dropped to both knees now, his massive frame trembling, blood dripping from his mouth. His voice cracked as he growled, "You cannot win." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The human stepped closer. His partner stood at his side. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Their unity was louder than any roar, stronger than any blade. The crowd, once so full of mockery, now sat frozen. Some trembled. Others bowed their heads. For the first time, they understood what they were witnessing. Not the defeat of a giant, but the rise of something far more dangerous. A bond between two warriors of different worlds. A bond that made them unstoppable. The announcer, who had shouted with such pride at the beginning, now struggled to find words. His 6 arms shook as his voice cracked. The fight continues, he said weakly. But even he knew. The balance of power had changed forever. The human's partner finally turned to the crowd, his voice like steel. You mocked him. You mocked his size, his silence, his humanity. Now you will remember this day. Not for your champion's defeat, but for the truth revealed before your eyes. His hand pointed to the human. The spirit of man does not stand alone. It stands with allies, and together it cannot be broken. The crowd had no reply. In the center of the arena, 2 figures stood. One small, one tall. One human, one alien. Different in every way. Yet united in one purpose, and before them the giant knelt. Broken and beaten. The age of mockery had ended. The age of respect was beginning. The arena was trembling with silence. Thousands of aliens who had come to laugh and jeer now sat frozen in disbelief. Their champion, the giant Korvac, knelt in the dust, battered and broken. His tusks were cracked, his armor shattered, his breath heavy with pain, and before him stood 2 figures. The human, small, calm, unbroken. His fist steady, his stance unshaken, and beside him the silver-gray partner, tall and glowing with quiet power. They were opposites, one fragile, one strong, one from Earth, one from the stars. But side by side they were something new, something greater than either alone. The crowd could not speak. Their voices, once cruel and mocking, had died in their throats. They were no longer looking at a joke. They were looking at history. Korvac roared, his voice cracked with fury and shame. I am champion. You will not defeat me. He forced himself to his feet, his massive body shaking, blood dripping from his wounds. His pride was the only thing left holding him up. The human did not move. His eyes locked on the giant sharp as steel. His fists rose again, but there was no hatred in them, only resolve. The partner's voice cut through the silence like a blade. You have already lost, Korvac. Not because you are weak, but because you could not see the truth. The giant swung his fists wildly, desperate to land even one strike. His attack shook the ground, his roar filled the air, but his strength was fading. The human slipped aside, precise and calm. The partner matched his rhythm, moving with perfect unity. Together they struck, not with rage, but with purpose, the human's fist to the knee. The partner's strike to the ribs cracked. Korvac staggered. His eyes widened in disbelief. Again they moved. The human's strike to the elbow. The partner's blow to the chest. Crack, crack. The giant stumbled backward, crashing to one knee again. His arms shook, his breath rasped. The crowd gasped in unison, their fear growing. The human stepped forward, his shadow small but unbroken. His partner followed, glowing brighter with each step. Together they circled the giant. Each movement was deliberate, each strike placed with precision. They weren't just fighting, they were teaching. Teaching every alien in the arena a lesson they would never forget. At last, Korvac tried to rise again, but his legs trembled and gave way. His massive body collapsed into the dust, shaking the arena floor. His weapon lay shattered beside him. His chest heaved with defeat. Silence. The announcer, who had once shouted with joy, could only whisper now. The champion has fallen. The crowd erupted, not with cheers, but with chaos. Some shouted in denial. Others whispered in awe. Many bowed their heads, unable to meet the eyes of the tiny warrior who now stood victorious. The partner raised his voice, calm yet thunderous. You all mocked him. You laughed at his size. You called him weak. But strength is not measured by height, nor by muscle, nor by weapons. He turned to the human who stood tall despite his small frame. Strength is in spirit. Strength is in unity, and this warrior has shown you both. The human finally lowered his fists. His breathing was steady, his eyes calm. He did not celebrate. He did not raise his arms in triumph. He only stood in silence, letting the truth speak louder than any words. The crowd began to change. One by one, voices shifted. He is not weak. He is not fragile. He is a true warrior. The whispers spread, growing louder, until the entire arena was filled with a sound no one expected. Respect. Even Korvac, lying broken in the dust, lifted his head. His pride was shattered, but his voice was heavy with something new. You are no insect. You are a warrior. The human looked down at him, his face calm. He gave no reply, but the silence was answer enough. The partner's glowing eyes swept across the crowd. Remember this day, he declared. Remember that a human, mocked as tiny, stood against your greatest champion and did not fall. Remember that he fought not alone, but with unity, and remember that spirit cannot be broken. The arena shook, not from roars of laughter, but from the weight of the truth. The announcer raised his arms weakly. The victor is the human. The crowd erupted, not with mockery, not with jeers, but with applause. Claws clapped against stone, wings beat the air, voices shouted not in scorn but in respect. The human did not smile. He only bowed his head once, then turned to his partner. The silver-skinned alien bowed in return. The bond between them was clear, equal, unshakable, eternal. As they walked from the arena together, the crowd watched in silence. Their laughter had been burned away. Their arrogance had been shattered. What remained was a lesson that would echo across the stars. The lesson was simple. Never underestimate humanity.